this is the final session in this AI adoption series with that mission to educate the community and the population. Really, today is when we start getting more creative, and it's really how do we start applying it practically to our business and then also to our day-to-day. I want us to shed all of these guardrails that we talked about, all of the terminology, but just really look forward to like what could this world be as AI, as our companion, as our partner as well. And so within that, there's going to be a transfer of knowledge, a transfer of skills, and a transfer of costs, right? When we're looking at AI. From one side, we have human control right now. And so there's certain things that you're in control in your business when you're having that, and then you use maybe a tool to help you take it to the next level, right? So think about, if I were to tell you the things that you believe you have control over, you're gonna have to give up some of that. It's kind of scary, right? It creates some fear. And it's right in that fear, we want to figure out like, what are those new experiences that we should create? Like, what are those that new data and that information that we need to display to the individual as they're working side by side with AI? You know, as you give up human control, if you look at this sliding scale here, you know, as we get further to the world of AI agents, we're going to have to figure out what is it that we should keep and control, and then what else should we give? And I'll talk a little bit about that. Has anybody had experience with AI? So that giving full autonomy, let's say, for example, those experiences, all of a sudden the email gets sent and you're like, whoa, right? Like, imagine if that was a situation. And that's where we need to figure out, when we're designing the new experiences, we need to figure out, not say we're not going to do it, but just say, how are we going to put some guardrails around it? And then what am I going to be in control of, right? We need to shift the way we do things, right? When our work is shifting, where we have to be critical about the output of AI. That whole thought process of how was this model trained is you being critical of the output of AI. Also looking and reviewing what it produces, right? And be able to bring your expertise in there. But not only that, it needs to be backed by theory. So, you know, what I mean by theory is you still need to bring a lot of like the things that we're taught as what's good, right? So I'm a design thinker, I'm a product strategist, I'm a user experience, human-centered. I'm bringing those processes into that, right? But if we were solving for engineering, we would probably want to bring somebody that understands the theory behind engineering. In our previous session, we had a discussion about aerospace. Someone in the audience said, hey, what do you think about the answers that ChatGPT gives on space? That would be bringing in an expert into that, right? So we need to be guided by that. And then we need to be experts in operations. And that's how we orchestrate a lot of these agents. And so if we look at the workforce of tomorrow, we're going to have to understand and orchestrate how these agents work and what's the process in which they work with the people that are in the workforce along with the AI agents, and then also how do we validate and do QA and things like that. So imagine all of us becoming more managerial in that sense. And then there's also the executive leadership's going to have to change, right? Because you could have a lot of these AI agents creating forecasting, pivoting, creating those plans. So now your executive leaderships have to be more operational in that sense. So there's going to be a huge shift in that, and it's really just getting ahead of that. Everybody that I talk to, all my colleagues and everybody I still talk to, they always tell me that the other person's going to lose their job. It's like, well, you know, I think everybody needs to be more product management, like more product centric. The developers are like, I don't need product anymore. And so it's going to be a shift of the way we look at it. I don't think jobs or people are going to eliminate it, but it is going to be flattened, and the expectation of speed and quality are going to go higher, right? So I think there was an example of somebody, I read this, is when the vacuum cleaner first launched, it was going to be, oh my God, you're going to have so much more time in your day. What didn't happen is that you didn't get more time in the day. The expectation of a clean house went up. And so that's how AI is going to really figure out, like, there's going to be new work. We didn't need plumbers until we had plumbing, right? So we're going to have to figure out what that is. And some of those, I'll talk about some of those roles that are coming out, like AI orchestrator, AI workflow designer, right out of the gate, we had AI prompt engineers, right? You guys heard about prompt engineering and things like that. That was the first step. And so now we're starting to figure out, like, how do we infuse our processes and our people to work alongside AI? And some of the processes that we created, we might not need, right? And so and that's across every industry has processes. And so we need to look at that. And as we're talking about processes, at the very core, we just need to figure out how are we going to sequence the AI output and the human expertise, right? And it needs to be applied within your use case in the context. So how are we going to go in and understand that the quality is happening as these agents create this autonomous workflow that's delivering more than we've ever delivered, but we have control and we have the ability to say, this represents me as an individual and it represents me as a business, and I believe in what's being created, and the quality is high and my customers love it, or my family loves it, right? And so we need to be guided through that, and it's very much in this technical term, which is human in the loop and human on the loop. And so that's where we're trying to figure out some stuff. So I want you guys thinking within your world, within your industry, where could those problems start coming up? Because that's where the opportunities are, right? So if I hear, as you're saying, yeah, but that's not going to be able to do that. How do we create tools? How do we create roles that can help make sure that that is clean data, or that the opportunity that we're creating is actually delivering on the value that we expected? With that, I wanted to show you something that I played around. Like my daughter, I told you guys my daughter was sick over this week, and I was like, you know what, let's play around and see what we can create. She started kind of thinking about it and just like, okay, well, what if we had this obstacle where you had to climb and then you had to jump, and she started drawing it. And then she's like, what if it was a rat? And she puts like dodge the rat in there. And so I take a photo of that image and I upload it to Sora, and this is what Sora created, right? And I gave Sora direction. Now this is far better than what any image generator has created. And so we're looking at it and I'm like, whoa, like that's so cool. And we gave it some direction. Obviously, she loves plushies. So I asked her to think like, what kind of format should it be? I think it should be a plushie, you know, it'd be cool if it did this. And we started writing it out and using some of these prompts, right? These standards with these prompts. So if I just uploaded that, it would probably just created a sketch, but I gave it some guidance. And we're like, okay, cool. And I love that it took everything that she did. And then I said, well, what if we created a video game? And so I was like, okay, let's see if we can create a video game. So then I was like, okay, I know how your standard video games are. Now that's where the theory and the philosophy comes in, is that you can create sprites. It's called sprites, right? And you create these images that sequence across, that you can then sequence through it. So I asked it to highlight the image here of this bear and create a sprite as if it was a game inside of like Nintendo or something like that, right? And you could see how it took it. I was playing around with it, and he's like, but my daughter's being able to do this. But what I want to show is that it's not just going in and prompting it to create something, but also knowing what the theory and the philosophy is behind it. I understand how games are created, at least from a rudimentary perspective. Don't ask me from a 3D perspective, but like, back in the day, and I've created my share of online games in the past. And so now we're kind of going through this evolution. And then I'm like, okay, well, what if we did something? So then I started asking it to create an image. I actually, right before this session, I was trying to get it to create a video that was transparent. It didn't do it exactly how I wanted, but there was some gap, right? So that's where the control, right? I had a lack of control, but I did this in a matter of an hour and a half, right? And so I'm working with her and trying to figure out, how do we animate it? How do we do this? So I'm pulling this stuff in and working through that, right? This is exciting. This is cool. That's something that you could do with your family. But I want you guys to think about like your industry. Like, how could you apply theory and philosophy to these tools that exist, right? And I talked about my background in software development, and I'm about to hurt your eyes, because how many software developers are in here? Anybody in software? Yeah, okay, great. I'm in trouble. How many of you guys have heard of SAFe? Okay. This is the way about like what, I would say like maybe, you guys are gonna get me on this, like 16 years ago, we started like really hearing about Agile coming into the game. And then businesses were like, I like Agile, but I don't like how I need to know what's happening. I need to have control. And so like the leadership is like, oh, you know what'd be cool is if we created SAFe, right? Scaled Agile framework for the enterprise. And we just added enterprise to it, right? And so I'm a SAFe, I like SAFe, right? But there's some things that I don't like about it. But this is what a software organization looks like, right? And there's different ways to do it. There's processes, there's people. People are doing this, we're ideating, we're creating prototypes. Once we get that, then we're creating these swim lanes where we're executing on those prototypes and we're saying, is it achieving that goal? Is it bringing me the return on investment? And the leadership at the top is having the ability to forecast and budget. And I started thinking, this is all changing, right? When we start introducing AI, a lot of this stuff becomes irrelevant. When we start bringing in integrations and start doing what I just did with animation, now all of a sudden, we do more with less. And so I started working through this, and I started nerding out. And think about this, you guys could do this for any industry that you're in. And this is what I'm looking to create for my company and for the organizations I consult with, is I want to figure out what do these new AI-infused processes look like as we're coming in here. And I'm using what I know, and this is product strategy, and this is a scientific method where we're creating a problem statement. And I'm saying that there's some things that are lacking when we're coming into using AI to code. It's lack security, and these are words that are big, but it's just like, hey, we can't do it for the enterprise because once I create something, I can't share it with somebody, all that stuff. And so I started mapping out, and I understand that a lot of this is gonna look very, very convoluted, but I want you guys to look at the concept in the sense that before, we had people actually doing a lot of this work, and there's tools that exist right now where you can start using AI to execute on your behalf. And I have Mobin over here. He's a product designer, and he's creating his portfolio. We're gonna see if he can finish his portfolio by the end of the day. He's gonna give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, but no pressure, Mobin. So how do we start introducing a lot of these AI point solutions into our day-to-day? And start putting theory and philosophy over it. So we had some developers here. Yeah, you developer right there. So with any business, there's a moment where you're trying to figure out what you're gonna build and what is it gonna be, right? So right now you can use ChatGPT or Gemini to help you collaborate along that side, right? Now I'm not saying completely give it to ChatGPT, but at least start, I believe in starting with the humans and aligning with the humans first and using AI to offset and augment some of that. But in product development, there's this thing called an MVP. And I'm using AI to create my MVP. And this was a 90-minute session where I actually participated in a hackathon. And I'm going through my process of product strategy and user experience in a human-centered approach. I'm asking ChatGPT to follow that process, and we get down to an MVP. And then once I get my MVP, I go into Bolt.new, which is one of many vibe coding applications out there, and I prompt it, and I say, create me this app. And then it does it, and it looks great. I'm like, okay, but there's things that are not working, so I start going through it and working through it and figuring out some stuff. Within that hour and a half, I had a full application that had an integration with OpenAI's LLM, right? That would have taken us, like in today's world without AI's assistance, that would have taken 12 to 18 weeks. And that would have been a team of about 10, right? And I'm not even saying it would have looked as good as that app gave me, right? So now I'm starting to think, wait, I know my designers, they love control. So then I started thinking, how do we bring these tools? And these tools, if you look at every tool out there, they're starting to come up with integrations for AI. And so we use Figma, and that's what I have Mobeen doing, where we can create and define what this app's going to look like. So the idea is that you can sync across the board, and then over to where I put legacy. That's how organizations develop software right now, and now it's legacy. And so there's a lot of challenges that this brings, but at least it's forward thinking, and where we're thinking about how do I bring AI tools into my day-to-day? How do I give it the process and the theory behind it? And then how do I bring in the right human control for us to deliver faster and quicker, right? And that's very much how, not just looking at how do you create tools for other people to use, but the biggest innovation is how to make yourself more efficient as an entrepreneur, as a startup, as a business, to do things that you've never been able to do with less of a budget than you've ever needed. Ultimately, when I'm telling you that we're going to have to shift from becoming the actual people that are prompting these tools to being the people that are actually the teams that are managing these integrations, and now we're not the ones rolling up our sleeves and actually creating and designing and coding. And where we're ultimately become more managing the entire process and making sure that things are and the outputs are happening. Like, what are some of those challenges, right? So like when I said creating new features on the fly, what comes to mind? How do I know those features are valuable? How do I know that those features are worth doing, right?
How did the AI agents know as much about your customer?
Exactly. Yeah. And we have answers to that, right? But we need to look at the gaps. We really need to understand that the gaps are where the opportunities are. That's where the new companies are going to be created. The logos that are dominating the tech space and the industry right now are going to get shifted. We need to figure out how do we shift to this model here where we start creating those new roles, those new processes for the future. And so I want to challenge everybody in here to jump in, start playing with those AI tools. If you have any questions, come in and talk to me. I do suggest that you focus on one thing, because then you're going to get lost, and at the end of the day, you're just going to have some really cool memes that have your family members inside of them. Like, figure out, like, be more targeted. Identify what you wish you could do, or what, for me, I would say social media, right? LinkedIn posts, things like that. I'm using it for that, and I'm creating the content, but I review it. And I make sure it represents who I am. So hopefully you guys found this insightful. Go figure out how you can optimize your workflow. Thank you very much, guys.